Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Fun topic. We all like this one. Let's do it. Unbelievable glitch in the Matrix stories that will make you question reality. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This will probably get buried, or first. When I was around 20 a few years ago, I kept having dreams about a woman with long black hair named Aurora, pronounced Aurora. They were different dreams, but for some reason her distinct face and name always ended up in them. It's got to the point where I would wake up frustrated and confused, trying to Google her name or find out how I was connected to her. After a few months, she stopped showing up and I dismissed it, thinking my brain was just being a scumbag. Fast forward a few years later, Halloween 2009, and I'm in the car with a friend stopped at a gas station. I'm about to pull out and merge onto a highway when I get a phone call from a random number. So I stop the car, but no one answers. There was a person behind me who grew impatient, honked at me, and then swerved in front of me instead of waiting for 2 seconds for me to move. Second they got on the highway, some silver Civic loses control of their wheel and crashes into the car that swerved in front of me. I called the cops and waited at the gas station for them to come. It turns out that the drivers of both cars died. It 100% would have been me if I hadn't gotten the phone call. I called it back a few hours later out of gratitude and curiosity. Rang 3 times and went to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Aurora. Please leave your name and number. I never had goosebumps like that in my life. I called it again the next day because I was that confused about the whole situation. Some woman answers, we get to talking, and I tell her my entire story, including the dreams I had. She tells me she doesn't know how I got her number, and that she never called me, as far as she remembers. Weird. Ask her if she has a Facebook account to confirm if she is in fact the woman in my dreams. Check her Facebook. Holy, it's her. If that's not a glitch in the Matrix, then I'm just batshit crazy. I've related this story before, but here goes. The parallel universe answering machine. This happened about 15 years ago. I called my friends up, but he wasn't home, so I left a message on his answering machine. I said, "Hey, it's me. Kill all extremists. Sorry I missed you. Call you later. Bye." And then I hung up and left the house. I made no other calls. Later that day, he called back and said, "Wow, that was quite a message you left. Who was that girl you were talking to?" I was like, "What are you talking about? I wasn't talking to any girl." Well, as it turns out, the message didn't end after I said bye. I had to go over to his house and listen to the message a few times. After my initial message that I did leave, as quoted above, there was a slight pause, and it continued on for another 30 to 40 seconds or so with me talking to some girl. It was my voice, but a conversation I never had with the girl whose voice I didn't recognize. You could compare it to the message I know I left, and the two voices were indistinguishable. Not just the voice, but, talking mannerisms. It was my voice. Also, references to my occupation and activities were the same. Basically, in this conversation, I was talking to this girl about going skiing, but I had to go down to my shop and work on a car first, which totally correlated to me. Then the message just stopped. It was recorded on one of those digital answering machines that recorded the message to a chip, so there was no tape I could have taken and analyzed, unfortunately. Also, neither I nor my friend had party lines, so that's not an explanation. It was very freaky. I can't explain it. TLDR. I may have connected to an alternate universe through a telephone answering machine. Driving home on a stormy day, I see that a side road up to the local golf course is blocked off by flashing barricades. I also spy a Mercedes parked past the barricades with its hazards on. I stop and walk up to the car to see if they need help. I'm an EMT. I shine my light in the backseat to see a man slumped over, apparently asleep. Thinking I've got a few drunks, I move up to the driver window, rap on the glass, and shine my light in. The driver is sitting bolt upright, unmoving and staring straight ahead. My window, rapping, or light doesn't cause him to blink, flinch, or move. I look over, and the passenger is slumped forward onto the dash. This begins to creep me out. I call down to the sheriff's station and request a code 2, no lights or sirens, unit to my location to help me check them out. Doors are locked. While on the phone, I walk back to my truck to go get my go bag. As I'm on the phone with dispatch, she asks me to get a license number for the car, just as a PG&E, power company, cherry picker truck comes rumbling down from the closed road. I move to go around the truck to get the plate number, and the car's gone. I talked to the driver of the truck, and he said there was an 80-foot tree down across the road that he didn't think it'd be open for a day or so. So the question is, where the hell did the car go? Trees up on one way, barricades down the other. It's kept me a bit unsettled when stopping at accidents or hazards since then. This happened to me in 3rd grade, and it scared me so much that I started crying and had to go to the office to talk to the principal about it. I was in the hallway for misbehaving, and my neighbor, Tad, a year younger than me, came walking out of a class to my right, passed in front of me and headed down some stairs. We said hi to each other. About 20 seconds later, he walked out of the same class, passed in front of me, headed down the stairs. I just stared at him confused and afraid, and he looked back like, "Why the F are you looking at me like that?" I never realized how much it was like Matrix deja vu. At 12 years of age, my mom let me stay in the truck as she went grocery shopping. As I wait, I see an old guy walking toward the truck with an indescribable look at me, as if I knew too much. He stops 5 feet from the truck, looks at me for a couple of seconds, and heads back to the exact way he came. It was rather traumatic for some reason and very confusing. At that age, 5 or 6 years later, my dad was showing me some home videos of us at Yellowstone, at the Old Faithful. I noticed the same guy, the same look, and the same clothes, peering at us on camera at me through the TV. I'm freaked out just hearing this. At a friend's place back in 2008, when we were all teenagers, we had a cool shed with friends that we'd hang out in every weekend. It had 4 sets of bunk beds, tables, a fireplace, a TV, a fridge, etc., the whole lot. One night, we were all hanging out in there when I decided I needed a piss. I walked out the front door of the shed and started to walk to the right when I stopped. Now let me explain the layout here. As you walk out of the shed, his house is to the left, and to the right is where we all parked our cars. Further out, you're left with empty fields and trees. It was dark by now, with the lights from the house illuminating the space between the house and our cars, but trailing off just past them. As I took a step to the right, intending to go behind the cars to relieve myself, I saw my friend's older brother standing there. I watched him for a good 5 to 10 seconds as he stood there, facing into the darkness. He then proceeded to walk behind a couple of trees and a car before he disappeared. Confused, I walked back into the shed and asked my friend what his brother was doing by the cars. The conversation went as followed. "Hey man, what's your brother doing by the cars?" "Him. What do you mean?" "Me. He just walked off behind the cars." "Brother, I'm right here." I looked over, and there his brother was, sitting down on one of the chairs with a drink. He was wearing the exact same clothes as I saw him in, and the only way to get into the shed was through the door that I was standing in the way of. To this day, I have no idea how it all happened. I'm guessing I was just seeing things, but the fact that I watched him walk around for a good 10 seconds has always puzzled me. I've never had anything else like that happen. Oh man, I have one of these that involves the Matrix. I got my wisdom teeth out in 2000, right around the time that the original Matrix came out on VHS. I was bombed completely out of my mind on Percocet after coming back from the surgery. I had awful wisdom teeth. And my mom basically just dropped me in bed and went and rented the movie for me because I'd never seen it in theaters. I remember being irritated that the sun through the windows was making the TV glare, but being too out of it to get up. A little bit after the black cat glitch in the Matrix scene, I passed out and apparently slept for about 8 hours. The tape in the VHS machine kept rewinding itself and playing over and over again. I woke up, and the movie was at roughly the same spot as when I passed out, but it was completely dark outside, 0 time lapse for me. I completely lost my mind. I started freaking out and screaming because I thought I'd discovered the secret and somebody turned off the sun. I remember crying and trying to explain it to my panicked family, who have never let me live it down. This kind of reminds me of the times in my life, few that it's happened, but you take a nap or you fall asleep in the middle of the day and you sleep a lot longer than you thought and you wake up and it's night and you're super confused. It's a pretty weird feeling, unnerving. So yeah, you could see how that would freak you out. I'm not sure if this relates, but about 2 years ago, or into my relationship with my girlfriend, we'll call her Susan, I had a dream about my ex. Dream went like this. I was in my room at my mother's house where I lived at the time, slamming my ex, balls to the wall, sexing it up. I knew I was cheating on Susan, but I didn't care. So in the middle of it, I look over to the window, from which you can see the back porch, and Susan is there watching us, crying and mortified, and then woke up. I thought it was a weird dream, but I dismissed it. A few days go by, and Susan and I are hanging out in my room. She brings up this weird dream she had a few days prior, and describes the exact dream, except from her point of view looking through the window. It freaked me the F out. I didn't say anything about it at the time. I still haven't said anything 5 or 6 years later. Still weirds me out. My dad had this little toy monkey that he used to call his favorite child and teased me and my siblings with. Not in a bad way, but it was really frustrating to us. And we spent hours trying to steal it from him. Well, anyway, one day we finally got it and threw it into the garbage after drawing on it and manipulating it for a bit. We made Dad laugh and search for it a bit, but basically figured we had thrown it out and gave up after a week or so. Anyway, a few years later, when I was about 17, I'm walking down the street in Toronto. I don't live in Toronto, I was just visiting friends. I see this little orange object on the side of the road. When I walk over to it, I pick it up and see that it was the exact same effing monkey. It even had the black Sharpie lines on it from when we drew all over it. I honestly cannot even come up with the chances of that happening, especially considering our garbage is sent to a local dump and is nowhere near Toronto. I used to work in a building that had 3 levels of sub-basements, with the piece of lab equipment I typically worked on in the lowest basement. I had the only key. There was a weird phone in there, and I did work late some nights, but not this night. I was sleeping alone in my apartment when I woke up to a call on my cell phone from my girlfriend at 3 a.m. She was in hysterics and asking why I scared her. Apparently, she received a call from the basement phone just a minute earlier with someone who sounded like me, slowly repeating her name until crackling and fading out. My apartment was 10 miles away from work. I thought she was lying, but I saw the 3 a.m. call from the basement phone, logged on her call myself. It still freaks me the F out. I used to work in music and tour with this band. The guitarist, Josh, of the band's best friend, Matt, had died a couple years ago. He always talked about the kid, and he seemed like a great guy. Josh always had this reoccurring dream where Matt was standing on this abandoned street, which supposedly was metaphorical for purgatory. Josh had all these conversations with Matt in these dreams, and because he had overdosed unexpectedly, he felt like his spirit was not able to move on. At the end of the dream, Matt would take a bulb from the streetlight on the street they were standing in the middle of. Josh described these dreams in extreme detail, and I could pretty much picture what the street looked like. Fast forward to about 6 months into touring with these guys. They were huge Bright Eyes fans and wanted to stop in Cassadaga, Florida. Bright Eyes singer wrote an album there, and it's a really creepy spiritual medium. It might be worth noting that 6 out of 7 of the people I was with were all atheists. So we drive into Cassadaga around 2 or 3 a.m. and drive around. Suddenly this big black dog comes in the middle of the road and just stops and looks at us. The guys in the band were weirdest and were saying things like, "Follow the dog, it's trying to show us something." And in my mind, I'm just thinking they're all effing idiots. We followed this dog for a few blocks as it was walking pretty slowly. All of a sudden, we turn a street and the dog bolts. We try to speed up, but Josh says, "Stop the effing van. This is it." We're all confused, and he gets out of the van and looks around. This is it. This is the street in my dreams. We hung out for about 15 minutes, and from the way he described the street, from having houses on the left to a park on the right, it was definitely the street. As we get in the van, a street light goes off, and we just drive off. He claims he never had any more dreams about it, as that was the closure on everything. In middle school, the entire 8th grade class has to do this thing called a cultural fair, where we researched our lineage and cultural roots and presented them after school at night for families to see. Me and a buddy are cruising the empty halls out of boredom before the whole thing starts, and for some stupid reason I bet him $10 I can open any locker and he gets to choose which one. He takes my bet and picks a random locker. He jiggles the handle and spins the dial on it a few times to make sure it's locked. I remember it being locker number 424. So I look at him and go, "Psh, watch this." I spin it, 6 right, 24 left, 34 right. I remember thinking these numbers sound right in my head. The latch lifts up and swings open. Ever since I was a kid, I have had what I call doubling occasionally happen around me. I put something in a pocket, then later found it in another pocket as well as the original in the pocket I had put it in. And yes, it has happened to money before. Score. The most standout example was when I was a teen at camp. All the leaders had engraved plastic name tags, and we were only issued one. I used to keep moving mine between my hat and my shirt. At the end of camp, I just crammed all my stuff in a duffel and headed home. Later, when I unpacked, the first thing I do is pull out my hat with a tag on it. Okay, so that's where I had it last. And of course, a minute later, I pull out a shirt with the same name tag pinned to it. I also experienced a similar phenomenon when I was a kid. For a few years, it happened on a daily basis, but I haven't seen it in a long time. Someone would place something in their pocket or backpack, etc., but when they went to go grab it later, it would be missing. I would then reach into my pocket, backpack, or whatever, and pull the item out. I initially got accused of being a thief, but when it happened repeatedly, when I hadn't even been within 20 feet of the victim, my friends and classmates stopped doing so, and just kind of accepted that would happen around me. TL. DR. I'm a quantum counterfeiter pickpocket. I had a monkey on my keychain back in high school. The chain was 3 links long. One day I was walking out of my car when I heard something hit the ground. I looked down to discover the monkey with links 1 and 2 of the chain still attached to the ground, and link 3 still attached to my belt. All the links were still fused together. My only guess is that the chain phased itself apart. I was walking up a hill in Portland, Oregon, and found a pack of American Spirits on the ground, only missing 2. A week later in San Francisco, California, I bought a pack of American Spirits, and after smoking 2, I put the pack inside the pocket of my jacket. The next time I went to smoke, the pack was gone. I was driving home from my girlfriend's one night. Going home the back way where I live is severely flat, so the road I was on was dead straight with no bumps, small hills, or any places the road got higher or lower, or anything like that. So I'm just driving straight. Got my high beams on because there's no one around and I can see everything in front of me. There's no house on either side, no driveways, just fields. Nothing is behind me either. Out of nowhere, a car appears about 20 feet in front of me, driving in the opposite direction on the other side of the road. I was going pretty fast, so I passed them quickly, and when I look in my rear view, there's nothing there. It freaked out so badly that I had to pull over and gather my thoughts before I could keep going. It still freaks me out to remember it. I can't explain this, and I hardly believe it myself. I've only ever told a couple of people, all of whom refused to believe it could happen. On 2 occasions, I've breathed underwater with no mechanical assistance. I was about 11 when it first happened. I was swimming one afternoon in the diving well at my gym. The pool is about 14 feet deep, with a fairly small surface area. I've always been a strong and confident swimmer, and I love to dive to the bottom of the pool and flip over, open my eyes, and look up at the surface. So I dive down, and sitting against the wall, I have the overwhelming urge to breathe in. I refuse this thought, disbelieving and scoffing at my brain's sheer shenanigans. But the thought comes again, and it is utterly convincing. I can't explain why I decided to breathe. I just know that I couldn't ever choose to do that, but in this instance, I did. I took the most careful, mincing breath in. I could feel great pressure, but I breathed normally. It was air I breathed, not water. I took 4 full breaths while sitting at the bottom of the pool, and after each breath, I became more horrified and agitated. My disbelief was outstanding. I kind of freaked out and shot to the surface as quick as I could. After I rationalized a bit, I calmed down. My logical mind kept thinking that somehow I'd had a bubble of air caught on my face. How else could I have breathed like that? But over the years of trying to make sense of it, 30 years old now, I've recognized that air always finds its way to the surface expediently. It won't just catch around someone's face. I tried to do it again that day, diving and diving, trying to replicate the experience. I got quite a bit of water up my nose before I gave up. It did happen a second time, in the same pool 4 years later. I took 5 breaths, feeling the same overwhelming confidence that it would be okay to breathe. I couldn't explain it the second time either. Very strange glitch. I don't know. No one has ever believed me, but I've only ever mentioned it to a select few. I still can't figure it out. Does anyone have any physics or logic thoughts on this? Has this happened to anyone else? Alright, pretty sure this will get buried, but I've always wanted to share this story. So my family and I moved when I was in the middle of 3rd grade. Before we moved, my parents took me and my siblings on a road trip to introduce us to our future house. It was owned by this nice old man who did a lot of self-repair over the years. We still find little oddities every now and then, undoubtedly left by him. I walked inside, waved at the kind-looking old lady in the rocking chair, walked around, and then we left. Nothing odd, except for one small detail. As we left the house, I was a little confused, but Mom, I asked, I thought you said the owner of the house lived by himself. Who was the lady? My mom gave me a 3-headed look. What old lady? My family agreed with her. There wasn't an old lady sitting in the living room, and other than Dad died recently. Yeah, I have a couple other weird stories about that house if anyone's interested. At 16 years old, sitting in a circle of friends at a party, someone I had a bad relationship with threw a lighter at my head without warning from the side. I couldn't see its long hair, caught it like a ninja, turned slowly and stared at the thrower, who went pale and never effed with me again. I have no idea how I did it. Sitting in a bar with friends, laughing, joking, pop. Something in my head went pop, and I felt like my brain had been reset for a split second. I talked to the others about it. They had no idea what I was talking about. Then I said, Gary's here. I thought he was here for some reason. About 20 seconds later, Gary walked into the bar. I'm still not sure what happened. Tell him about it all later. He says he came because I called him. I checked my phone. I did not call. And he has no record of it either. It's like someone reversed time and messed up some of the details of the memory wipe. Those are the 2 most memorable things I can think of. Oh, there was also this time I got really stoned, and this block of chocolate on my computer desk disappeared. It just kind of gradually vanished over a couple hours.